two of us. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. This is Black Talk Platform, where I am your host, Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins, and this is a new format in our third, I believe this is our third live show on a Friday. And on first Fridays of each month, if the Lord's will, I will be sharing the community different ministry opportunities
Pastor Deb, I think you froze there.
Oh my.
You're back.
I'm back. Okay. So my pastor of choice is Pastor Anthony S. Davis, who is the pastor of Harvest Restorations Ministries in the Co-op City section of the Bronx, New York. He has been here literally with me since Black Talk platform's inception back in 2020. And so welcome, Pastor, as I chat with you this evening. How are you?
Doing well. Glad to be here. Always a pleasure. Always a
Oh
pleasure to
my.
share this space with you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Just to let the audience know why you. We certainly share we share in the community different ministry opportunities, but we also have a particular bent towards social justice. And so he and I we sort of jive in that way. We are on the same playing what is it? Level
Playing field? Yeah.
playing field. And
Yeah.
that's a baseball term. And our Yankees are like the champions, and I can't even get the terms out. But certainly, Pastor Davis and I, we pursue the same type of justice for God's people, the cause of our people. Um, just for those of you who don't know, I refer to myself, Pastor. I wanted to drill down on my own um interpretation of how I do ministry, because Pastor Davis has seen the reiterations, but I've always been consistent in terms of fighting for justice. Um, um, but I see myself as more of a philosophical theologian in the tradition of Black liberation. And so if anyone goes back to review any of the archived editions of Black Talk Platform, you will see that that's the vein from which I speak always about the uplift of the Black community. And so tonight, in chatting with Pastor Davis, we will probably not do a whole lot of planning between the 4 weeks that we're not here with each other, which is really good because it allows us to bring you, the audience, a more organic discussion between us. And so there are so many issues going on in the world right now. And we've chosen three to discuss tonight. And we will begin with what happened in Detroit with Mr. Porter Burke. Let me share my screen so that the audience who is not familiar with it can hear and see what we have, okay, to talk about in regards to Mr. Porter Burke and the tragedy. And we'll be back to discuss it after we watch this video.
Please have to increase the audio. Sergeant, please have them increase the audio.
This was like 45 minutes. We were on a route. I mean, but he in this area. So is he just walking around tonight, or? Like he got an episode. He got like a light blue. Yeah. And his hair's got yes. Like flat. Yes. He looked good. He was like that corner one of that. Yeah. He was like young. Like he don't have like real bad episodes. Yeah. Like the DJ. You got a knife room? Yeah. And,
what kind of knife?
Like a pocket knife. Like a pocket knife.
Okay.
Like a pocket knife.
So if we find him, we come here, would you take him down? Would you be willing to petition him in the hospital?
At this exact moment, yeah, probably. If I found him, I would definitely be charged in the hospital. At the hospital, yes.
What we'll do is we can even come pick you up.
Y'all gonna pick me up?
Or do you have a ride?
He just put my, he just slapped my tire, so that I can go anywhere, so you guys have to pick me up.
All right.
Okay.
Order? Yes.
Order with a P.
Yes, you put my phone.
Yeah.
My name.
His name is Porter.
Not Porter. It's 313.
Yep.
767.
Video pauses here so that we don't put out the phone number.
Okay, we'll give you a call if we find him. If he comes back and you haven't heard from us, just give us a call, okay? Yep.
All right, so I want to pause here for 1 second.
Come here real quick. You're okay? You're not in any trouble. You're not in any trouble. Can you just talk to me and drop the knife? 2-1, he is armed with a knife. Hey, my man, just come here real quick. You're okay? You're not in any trouble. I just need you to drop the knife, okay? My name is Sean. My name is Sean, okay? I'm with the crisis intervention team. I'm just here to check on you. Okay? Unit number, probably back off. My name is Sean, man. You're okay. You're not in any trouble, okay? I just want to help you. I just want to help you, man, okay? Can you do me a favor and drop the knife? Can you drop the knife for me, please? Please? Whatever you're going through, I can help you. Porter, you're not in any trouble, man. We just need you to drop the knife for us, okay?
I'm going to pause it here, and we'll pick back up at that point in a moment. This is
Just drop the knife for us, Porter. Yes, sir.
I need it coming, do not come from the north end. To do, I need to start staging medics, move them at Shaker and Linden.
We're here to help you, Porter.
Hey, Porter, what do you need? Hey, Porter, just have a seat right there. Don't walk closer to us, okay? Do not walk closer to us. Somebody have to take it. Hey, Porter, put that knife down.
We're here to help you, Porter, okay? We just want to help you. Your brother's worried about you. I'm worried about you.
So, then you just dropped the knife? Can I ask you why? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Huh? All right, set that down and we'll do that. All you gotta do is set it down and we'll do that. All right? I promise you, you ain't in no trouble. Don't walk towards us. Don't walk towards us.
Don't do that. Don't, Porter, don't do that. Don't do that.
Sit down. Drop the knife. We'll be good.
Just drop the knife, Porter, okay? We're here to help you, man. Whatever you want, we'll get you, okay? Don't walk closer.
Porter. Hey, you want some help? Are you sure? Porter. Okay, hey, can you listen to me? Can you just set that knife down and we'll talk? I promise, here, we'll put everything away. We just need you to drop the knife. Can I ask why not? we'll give that back to you. I need to talk, but I can't talk to you close with that knife in your hand. What do you want to do? You want to ride home? You want to ride home? We'll go take you home. Porter. Someone will say that. Don't keep it close. Someone will the car.
So do we just have individuals? Mr. Dewey is armed with a knife. 14.
Porter, we're here to help you, man. Whatever you want, we can help you with. We can get you home.
Next one, right? Over to the staging area.
Right now, we just need you to drop the knife. Right now, we just need you to drop the knife.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share, Pastor. Okay. I didn't realize I was doing so much grimacing during that. Just so uncomfortable. So many questions, Pastor, about this. They at the point at which I cut the video off, the chief resumed his press conference. This is just one of the released body cam videos. Let me let you start, Pastor, while I try to compose myself here, because I do have a lot of questions and comments. Certainly, we may not be able to answer them here, but
yeah. I think there's so many breakdowns with this, and I think it's structural and systemic racism is at the heart of virtually everything that has happened with this. I think he's 20 years old, I believe. I'm not certain.
Yes, 20.
But he's a young man. And so these last 2 years or so, 2-3 years, particularly with the pandemic, you see mental health issues have escalated in our community. They've intensified, I should say,
Sure.
within our community. And this is not uncommon where like there's a call for a mental health crisis happening at a home. Somebody's acting in a way that's, like this or unusual or, and a family may call police to help and they're there to provide a service, right? But before we even get to this point, there's a breakdown within the community because of the fact that we see, even for young people, young Black men in particular, 14 to 18, let's say, suicide rates for that population have skyrocketed these last few years. So they're dealing with some types of depression and whatever feelings that they're going through that's leading them to commit suicide. And you see a lot of Black men in particular lately, these last few years, maybe even the last 5 years or so, overdosing on drugs. The Black community has not been a community that overdoses. We may take drugs, we may smoke marijuana, different things, but not ODing.
Right.
That is more specific to white people. White people have a tendency to OD on drugs. Black
right.
folks don't OD on drugs. So we're taking heavier, stronger drugs. And we're doing that because we are dealing with more mental health issues, right? We're committing suicide. Black folks never committed suicide. That's not something that Black folks did. That's not part of our culture. We see this uptick in suicide. And so that's the first thing, that we're not addressing the mental health issue.
Right.
Even when it comes from a diagnosis point of view, there's clinician biases, right? We see that all the time where Black men or women, the Black community, are not diagnosed appropriately when it comes to mental health issues. So there's a breakdown there. So I've talked about breakdowns, right? Even before we get to this point, there's breakdowns in terms of structural racism where even for young people, a 20-year-old, 18, 19, that age group, there's very little resources within the community, little resources within the schools, because Black kids are likely, or young people likely, to live in communities where they don't have the resources to deal with these things. And so you're more prone to have these types of episodes because you don't have any interventions.
Right.
So then when it gets to this escalated level, the only intervention you have now is law enforcement, because you didn't have the mental health therapy or the prevention leading up to this episode, right? So now law enforcement gets called in, and law enforcement is not equipped to handle mental health issues, right? That's not what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have biases kick in, and of course the police department has never been friendly towards Black folk. So as I understand in this instance, I didn't get all the details, but I believe there were like 5 officers that came.
There were actually more, but 5 who shot. Mm-hmm.
Right. So there were 38 shots. I believe 15 hit him, I believe. And so there were more than 5, which is, and so it's astonishing that with them as armed as they are with tasers, and I understand, I think one of the, I don't know if it was the chief, someone said that he was too far away to tase. And this was their only recourse was to shoot him, but there's never any other recourse for Black folks, Black people, Black men. In this case, many times it's Black men that get shot like this. It's not to say that Black women don't get shot, they do a lot, but overwhelmingly it's these Black men that get shot like this. And there's no recourse, right? Because there could be 10 officers there. I don't know what the number was, but 5 shot, but there's enough people there to get this man under control. Absolutely. Without anybody getting hurt or minimal, but it ends up becoming very fatal, right? And it's not to say that police don't have to make quick decisions. It's not to say that their life is not in jeopardy. It's not to say that we want to minimize their fear in the moment. You don't want to do that, because it's a hard job, and I think we understand that it's a tough job. Mm-hmm. But it always seems that when it's their community, when it's them, it doesn't end like this.
Right.
It doesn't end like this. So that to me, that all speaks to all these things from the very beginning, not getting the help that he needs. It's escalated. Law enforcement, there's a lot of instances here where racism, structural racism, is a factor.
Absolutely. And the first, how shall I say this? And I'm pretty sure I've said it on this show before. I have told my husband and my children, if I have a mental breakdown or whatever you may term it to be, don't call 911. Knock me the heck out. Do whatever you have to do, as long as you're not in danger, right? But don't call them, because too many, and I can never ever forget our elder Eleanor Bumpers. I will never ever forget how they did her right here in our town, right?
Yeah.
But that's one thing. Don't call him. And I'm listening to the brother. He simply didn't want his brother to harm anyone. That's what he said, right?
Yeah.
So that he wouldn't do further harm to himself by going to jail, of course. And, I can't imagine how that brother feels having called and also being told we'll find him and bring him back home, being reassured. So like you did with the numbers, there were several officers there, 5 fired 38 shots at a man who had a knife. And as you pointed out also, the distance, I'm just looking and wondering, are my eyes deceiving me? How far away from them he was? And with so many officers being there, here's another big thing. The first officer to speak to him, name is Sean. He identified himself as Sean from the Crisis Intervention Program.
Yeah.
He was talking to him in that crisis intervention manner. And then all of a sudden, all of the cops start talking. If you watch that, you see cop number 2, officer number 2. Why are all of them yelling at someone who is clearly emotionally disturbed? It just calls into question, what are they really doing? So I was sharing audience with Pastor Davis that I spent some time today with the NYPD. For those of you who don't know, this is what's known as the National Faith and Blue Weekend. Started by a Black pastor who's, and I just found out today, I didn't know, I thought it was just law enforcement, but started by a Black pastor who wanted to bring some levity between law enforcement and the community by, everybody, the community, us. We are always barking at them, and I believe rightfully so when we do barking at law enforcement, and then they're not always, but they often harm us. And so he thought meeting of the minds between law enforcement and the community, ergo Faith in Blue, that's started during the riots, I guess, not the riots, the protests. He said 3 years, so maybe 2019, whatever the case may be. I spent some time and I was talking about this case. Now, let me share with you all a case that happened right here in the Bronx, New York. I don't know if it was yesterday, but it was definitely this week. If you look it up on Google, you'll be able to find it. In the 52nd precinct. That is not where we are, but it's if anyone knows the landscape of the Bronx, it's the precinct that covers the Bronx Zoo, not the Bronx Zoo, the Botanical Gardens, the New York Botanical Gardens, right? So it's over there. And Pastor, I've always seen that as a different, it's just a weird part of the Bronx to me. One wouldn't think with the area that is covered over there that there would be so much violence, but sometimes a lot of stuff, and it's like the worst type of stuff happens over there. It's a weird thing, people. You feel that too? A little bit?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just strange. So they had a similar incident to the one that we're talking about in Detroit with Porter Burks. I want you all to know his name. I don't want any of our victims, Black bodies, to become, just another Black man killed. Know his name. His name is Porter Burks, and he has a family that is grieving his loss tonight. He was only 20 years old. Anyway, so they had a similar case here in the Bronx, in the 52nd precinct, where a man had, I think this is this one was the one with the 8-inch knife. I'm not sure, but nevertheless, he had a knife over here. So the officer is talking to him. There's video of this too. They never fired a gun. They never fired a gun. They fired their tasers. This particular officer even reloaded. I was just saying to Pastor Davis, I didn't even know you can reload them. Whatever he did, he redid it. The taser, though. There were several officers, and they were able to take him down. That officer who fired his taser ended up being injured by the knife that the perpetrator had, right? And to let you all know what happened, the officer's nose was cut off. Half of his nose is gone. He was rushed to the hospital. They fixed his nose. He's probably going to have several surgeries. But guess what? The officer is alive. He's been discharged from the hospital. And the man who had the emotional disturbance, he is also alive and getting whatever the treatment is that a mentally disturbed person gets. That happened in the Bronx, New York, guys. That happened in the Bronx, New York. Are you seriously telling me that other law enforcement jurisdictions can't do the same? Can't do the same? And I asked the officer I was with who shared that with me today. I said, are you all just afraid? Are you just afraid? And so another officer who was also in this conversation said to me, it reminds me of the training, one of the training presenters, what they said to us, or what they say to the NYPD officers. They tell them, Pastor, that when you all see a perpetrator, just like in the case of the Detroit case, and even this case I just mentioned, when one person shoots, all of you begin to shoot. I said, is that how they train you? She said, no, that's what he said we do. It's like an instinct. It's like, a knee-jerk reaction. If Pastor Davis is shooting, then Dr. Deborah has to shoot. Yeah. I said, but why? And so the question really is why? If that is not a part of their training, wouldn't you think they want to retrain them to not do that? What do you think about that? I mean, that's mind-blowing in my mind.
Well, it is a surprise. I mean, of course, it's not part of their training. And I think if we were to see how officers are trained, we would be surprised at some things, because what they classify as training when it comes to us is not the way it's done for other populations.
Exactly.
And I think when you talk about a knee-jerk reaction, there's just certain biases that people have when it comes to Black people.
Period.
It's just the way it is. They did some things, even when it comes to teachers. I forgot what it was, some type of analysis in terms of how teachers view Black children in their class, Black boys in particular, and there's negative attitudes and dispositions, even if they're behaving the same as their white counterparts. There's an automatic bias that when it comes to looking at Black people and Black boys, they're criminalized from the very beginning, right? So
Right.
when we talk about all these, there's biases that happen because they don't. You very rarely hear instances where a white person is shot 38 times. I mean, that's very rare.
Almost unheard of. Right.
It's really heard of, if at all. I believe it happens, but just nowhere near. You know, it's not something that's reported on like that, or you see like that.
Right.
So I mean, there's these biases. So when they're saying that they're not trained that way, and if one shoots, they all shoot, because that's what they feel they should do when it comes to you. You're not a human being, and I think that's the issue. You're not looked at as a human being. But when you reference the case in the Bronx, and it's good to hear that they didn't shoot them, and it's unfortunate that the police officer got his nose cut the way it was, you know, and that's not cool. But you did, you know, mention that he's alive and the perpetrator's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the ultimate thing. When you take on that job as a police officer, there are risks. There are physical risks when it comes to that.
Right.
That's an unfortunate thing. And unfortunately, it does happen that there's times where you get hurt. But I think ultimately it is better to be hurt and protect somebody, and protect yourself and protect the community, than to see someone blown away or shot at 38 times, right? That's the thing. So, you know, it's not much. I understand what you're saying about, can you train them? I don't think it's a matter of training. I think it's a matter of disposition or attitude when it comes to Black people. And, you know, we don't really want to have that conversation.
We don't. And I think for a place like Detroit, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the politics in Detroit, but they literally have no more Black representation at the congressional level. And if that is the case, Black people better beware.
And this is Detroit we're talking about. We're saying that about, you know.
Yeah. And it's going to get worse. And I you know, what is the answer? I don't know if there's a quick fix for this. I don't know how this case is going to turn out. But I am concerned about our people in Detroit. I'm concerned about our people throughout the nation, but specifically in Detroit, because isn't Detroit Chocolate City?
That's what I'm saying. That's the point. Yeah.
And you know, we've talked about this on this show, about how they did in Harlem, how all the Black people divided against each other, and they lost that historic seat that was formerly held, or initially held, by Adam Clayton Powell Jr. So, I'm still not over that, how they lost that seat. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against Congressman Espelot. He did that the 9 of them, or however many of them were running for that seat, did not do, is he was out on the streets speaking to the people in Harlem and in the Bronx that his area covers while they fought it out. It's so maddening to me, Pastor Davis, because when we don't have representation, things like this continues to happen. Even with you know me, I'm not happy with the Congressional Black Caucus, But I'm talking about Detroit, which has
Yeah.
historically been a bastion for upward mobility for Black people. And I see it going down quickly. And I don't know, you can share more words about this before we move on to our next topic if you like, but it's just bothering me a lot. And I'm going to keep watching this case to see how the family responds to whatever the law
Yeah.
enforcement.
And I think also, like, this just happened, I think, a day or so ago.
I think the timestamp said October 2nd, just a few days ago.
Right?
Yeah.
And but you know what, the reason why I say that is that you don't see it on social media like that. I haven't seen it. Not that pervasive. Usually there'd be phone calls and dialogue about these things, and I think my fear is that we become numb at these things. That's why it's important to say the name, as you said, say their names, and to have these kind of conversations in this space, even though it may seem we're talking about similar things, but the reason we are is because that's the problem with the country. Right? This is almost an epidemic, you know, something that is we cannot grow too comfortable with this. We have to challenge it. We have to talk about it. We have to understand that, as you said, this is a human being. This is somebody's son, someone's brother, someone's family and friend, and everything else. It's very young, 20 years old, and so you have to talk about it, because this is really a problem for Black folks throughout the country. This is not just one particular city. This is not bad apples. This is the nation. We know this. We don't have to even do this anymore. But I think people are numb. I think people, if you ask the average Black person, they don't really know some of the plights that we're talking about here, some of the things that are happening, as I mentioned, suicide and overdosing and various things that are happening. Our life expectancy is decreasing. You know, we're having all kinds of various crises when it comes to health and wellness, right? And well-being. And what is easier to do is to self-medicate through addictions, or through social media, or through entertainment, you know, and we begin to lose out. But we can't do it. You have to engage it and be politically involved.
And you know, the fact that you mentioned that you're not seeing the timeline lit up, that's why you don't see me on Facebook too much anymore. That's if I had to describe, and I do have an opportunity in this area where I work to present the difference in the social medias, right? Facebook is for like people like you and I, we know each other outside of social media. It's like for colleagues and friends and family, classmates you haven't seen. So that's a little more intimate. But what I found, and the reason why I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook anymore, Pastor, is because there's just two mindsets over there, for or against, you know. And so what do we find ourselves being for, and what do we find ourselves being against? And it's drawn down the middle. It's as if, well, I'll have to say this, and I don't know about your timeline. A lot of the people on my timeline on Facebook are the Black elite type bourgeoisie, you know. And so they don't really want to hear this. They don't want to hear about another Porter Burks, because where they want us all to be focused on is November 8th. And that just doesn't work for me anymore. That doesn't work for me anymore. So I found that to be a toxic environment. And so that's why you really don't see me over there. Now, Twitter is also toxic. However, everybody is talking about Porter Burks. You know, they care about Porter Burks over there. And I thought that it needed to be spoken about, his murder. You know, I'm calling it a murder. I'm pretty sure I don't feel that any of these officers will be charged, because what did the chief say? Or I think somebody in that press conference said it was a matter of life or death, something to that effect.
Yeah, that's just shaping the narrative. That's all that is. I mean, and you're right when it comes to what certain social media platforms are used for. And you're right when you describe Facebook the way you do versus Twitter.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the usage rate in Twitter versus Facebook. I don't know what the differences are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in general, when we talk about social media in general, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any other platforms, TikTok, what have you. I don't know if I see, considering what happened, I don't think I see it the way it needs to be escalated.
Absolutely.
As far as dialogue, it's not there. And and the reason why I say that, because just talking to people off social media, just in general, you can sense a weariness that people have when it comes to stuff like this. They're tired.
They're tired.
And again, people deal with the mental health issues of this, right? Because it's depressing, it's burdensome. And so how do you there were moments even for myself during some of in 2020 when a lot of Black Lives Matter protests were occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And you're dealing with things. It's depressing. It's sad. It's tough to deal with, and you're dealing with your own well-being. You were talking about cringing and some of the emotions you felt looking at that video. And I told you earlier, I didn't see the video. And I read all the details. I didn't want to see the video. Not that I had a problem watching it now, but I'm just saying that I've seen too many of these things, and after a while, you do grow a little numb.
Yeah.
Not indifferent, not that you don't care, you care, but to protect yourself, right? Emotionally,
mm-hmm.
you grow a little numb on that stuff. And so I think that's the problem. But what I'm saying is that we have a responsibility. We cannot grow numb.
We can't.
Yeah.
And then, so what do we do? And you and I, we've had this question to come up before. What do we do? We keep doing this in hopes that there will be those who reach out and say, you know what? I'm glad you brought it up. I would like to talk about it because I'm now trying to deal with my emotions around that. And that's why I've been doing a whole lot of talking about emotional trauma, because think about it, Pastor, that 7-minute video just now, watching that dialogue back and forth. And he said, I just want to go somewhere and rest. I want some rest. But that's not the kind of rest that I believe he was talking about, right? Okay. When we think about that, I mean, I was just watching myself because I wasn't sure that we were still being seen. And then I saw how my body language. That's a traumatization now. And I apologize to you because you did tell me back in the green room that you hadn't seen it because you didn't want to see it. But for the sake of the audience who probably didn't know it, they needed to see it. And so what does that mean? What does that mean for the people in Detroit? How do we have a responsibility to them? I think we are living out our responsibility by talking about it tonight. But who do they call nationwide? And that sort of segues into the next story that we're going to share. And that's about President Biden's announcement last night, or yesterday rather, about the pardoning of any federally convicted people for simple marijuana possession. And it's simple because there are different levels of offense and felony convictions. So under the federal mandate. Interesting to me, the article that I chose to pull up, and let me just share it with everyone. I'm going to read a little bit of it because I do want us to get to the last topic tonight before we close out, Pastor. But let me just read a little bit from this Washington Post article, because I honestly hadn't thought about it like that, but I probably should have, because everything is done for some type of political gain and positioning, in my opinion. So their headline reads, Biden's pardon for marijuana possession inject issue into midterm final stretch. Very interesting, the timing, but we now know why. I don't think this rises to the occasion of being known or called the October surprise. It doesn't. This is just political positioning, I believe. So let me just read a little bit from this article. President Biden has injected a long-held policy dream of fellow Democrats into the final stretch of the midterm elections, announcing pardons for anyone convicted of a federal crime for possessing marijuana and urging governors to do the same. It is the urging governors to do the same that makes this a very political move by the president. The pardon would affect about 6,500 people and thousands more in the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. The president also directed his administration to expedite a review of whether marijuana should continue to be listed in the same legal category reserved for the most dangerous drugs, including heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. Reclassifying marijuana could end decades of misalignment between federal laws banning the substance and a growing patchwork of state laws that permit it. I'm going to stop right there and just share my little commentary in terms of it being connected to Porter Burks. So while we have the president doing this, is I see politics from sometimes a very jaded perspective, and so this is one of those. The 6,500 people. So, Pastor, 6,500 people being pardoned here in New York City would, for me, be very significant. That would be a lot of people if that 6,500 were concentrated right here in New York City. But alas, it is not. It's nationwide. So, in a country of 330 million people, 2.7 million of which are behind bars, that number is insignificant, although it will be significant to those 6,500 plus the thousands more in the District of Columbia. So I'm not minimizing the positive attributes this is going to have on their lives in terms of housing, in terms of employment. These are good things. They will no longer be stigmatized. Now, the devil, as they say, is in the details. They haven't figured out how they're going to go about it. This is just an announcement, right? And so to put it off on governors when you actually have the power, why are you asking for them to consider the reclassification? You know, I always have a lot of smoke for this president. So, you know, you can come with the other side if you like. That's fine. I have a lot of smoke for this president, particularly I have not forgotten the 1994 crime bill that he so proudly boasts of being the author of, or at least the one who made sure it got through. So these laws that he's asking to have reconsidered or reclassified, they're an outgrowth of policy that he made sure to make to criminalize Black people for. Make this make sense for me, Pastor.
I can't make it make sense.
Oh, okay.
I cannot make it make sense at all.
You know,
I think you said a lot right there in terms of, you mentioned if it was 6,500 in New York City, it would have more significance for you, but it's 6,500 nationwide, which is not as significant. Although I agree with you that it means something to those 6,500 people and their families and so on and so forth. But obviously, as the headline said, that it's done just before the midterm election, so there's a political component to this, right? It's maneuvering. It's it's putting them in a better position, right? It's leverage, right?
Yeah.
But also, with the legalization of marijuana, this is nothing, because the more I look into the legalization of it at the state level and these dispensaries, which is talking about the business of marijuana, right? The legalized business of marijuana. We're not taking advantage of that. We don't get an opportunity to take advantage of that, right? So it's a lot going on. It's a lot of layers to this, right? And I start there in regards to the dispensaries, is because as a business, white people are the ones that have these licenses and are given these loans basically to start these dispensary type businesses, and they're the ones and it's become, I want to say, close to $1 billion industry. Like it's significant money when it comes to selling marijuana legally. It's a lot of money. It's become it's one of the fastest growing, most significant industries in America right now.
Yeah.
And so the people who went to jail for possession, and even those who've gone to jail for selling, right? You become a felony, you have all these issues, but white people, by and large, are the ones who own these dispensaries and are the ones who are given financial leverage to start these businesses, and they're the ones making the money off of it now, right? You have to factor that into this, because you have to remove the stigma of marijuana because it's in the best interest of business. It's not good to stigmatize marijuana or criminalize it anymore when there's so much money to be made from it. So that's part of the layers that we're talking about, right? So I want to say it's $1 billion industry. Maybe one of the people who are watching the show can like Google that. But it's a lot of money, and so you have to do that. So you have to make it not so criminal on the one hand, but on the other hand, you're not really saving a whole lot of black lives, 6,500. But how many millions, or you said 2-point-something million? How many of those people have gone to jail for possession? Right. And we have an idea what some of those numbers are, and Biden and the Clinton administration, and really prior to that, Reagan, Nixon, all of them had a hand in doing this, right? When we talk about jailing specifically black men for possession of marijuana, and so you've ruined a lot of lives.
Yes.
And so this doesn't undo that. I mean, when you think about in proportion of the offense committed against these folks who've been in jail for so long,
right?
But what it is advantageous to do it now for the midterm elections. So everything about this is leverage for people other than us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And then I have this habit of not naming names because I don't want to give platform visibility to those who work against us. They have it already, and that's the problem, Pastor Davis. I much rather have you out there speaking on behalf of black men or black people in general than some of these characters out here known as legacy civil rights leaders, because I heard one come right out applauding this move when I have not heard, and that doesn't mean it has not been said, but I have not heard a rallying cry around the family of Mr. Purdue Burks out there in Detroit.
Right.
The same person. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying I haven't heard it, but there was a quick, fast, and even a press release regarding this. And I think much more can be done. I'll be nice because I don't drop the names, but the wrong people are standing up as representatives of our community, and it's too much. It's because the young people, they're not even having it. People younger than us, Pastor Davis, they are not trying to hear it. So we're like that last little bastion. That's why I can roll with Pastor Davis, is because we're in Generation X. Right. When we were not well served by those who came before us, by and large, right? So I feel like it's our responsibility to support those who are coming behind us. That's not what we've gotten. That is not what our community has gotten.
Right.
This is all very self-serving. It is to get us to say, wow, if he could do this just less than a month before the midterm election, what more will we get? Well, I want to see how many of those 6,500 are actually black people. and if it's not a significant number of us being Black people, it's probably most of us, because they just arrest us for whatever, and they always overcharge us, and we get harsher sentences. So it might be a large number of that 6,500, especially in DC. But I'm happy for the people. Don't get me wrong. I'm really happy for them. Hey, Jojo. I'm happy for the people. But this guy, he doesn't get any applause for me for doing something that he caused in the first place. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, if you use the concept of restorative justice,
and
you think about what Biden was complicit in regards to the 94 Crimes Bill, and does this reverse any of that? It's a drop in the bucket compared to the damage done.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean much. And so there's nothing really to applaud.
No.
But he should continue to be critiqued. So I don't mind you having smoke for this president, because I'm very neutral, or don't have any. I'm very ambivalent regarding him. I don't have any love or hate. It's just I want to see something. I want to see more. But this is not enough. This is not enough, and I think we need to say that. The unfortunate thing when you talk about members of our community that are regarded as leaders, there's a lot of money in being a supposed leader or social justice advocate,
right?
That it's become a business.
Oh yeah.
All right, and there's perks with it, and so that's what happens. So that's why you can't trust even what is referred to as liberal media, because it's still not liberal. It's still everything is it's still people are in bed with their group, right?
Yep.
And it's about what's in the best interest of the group. So at the end of the day, it's all about making money.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's all about leveraging power.
Yeah.
And maintaining power and keeping people in position that they are accustomed to.
Oh yeah.
Right? So what you need when you frame the conversation in the beginning about your theological disposition or being the philosophical, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the point. That's the direction, that the paradigm we as clergy have to move in.
Yeah.
Because we have to articulate the issues, have conversations, and critique, and do these things, because it's not happening. And the old guard of those who are, a lot of them maybe clergy or serving in some capacity in that regards, they're the ones that have let us down, right? They've been co-opted.
They have.
And they're making a lot of money, and so but you have to be free, independent thinking, philosophical, but not bought.
And not bought.
Not bought. And that's the hard thing, is not being bought. And so money can't be the reason why you do this. It has to be love for the community.
They tell us what to think, and I refuse to be told what to think. And I'm glad Brother Jojo is here. I don't know if you caught the show last week, Pastor, but Brother Jojo was on with me last week, and we were talking about a brother down in Florida. I know you got family down there, and you may or may not have heard about him. His name is Brother Odell Wallace. Another case that you are not going to hear about. Now, we've heard about Brother Purdue, right? We heard about him because it's an egregious case. You won't really hear about Brother Ozone because of who he's accused of having killed. And it was an officer. So we start with an officer killing us, and probably going to get off from responsibility, being held responsible for the life of Mr. Burks. But then Brother Wallace is accused of having killed an officer. I could show you the video of that, what they've released. I don't know what happened. It's not real clear, right? But to your point about the liberal media, in particular, those who look like you and I, who are out here carrying the water for a specific party, they should have his case mentioned, at least a mention, but they won't. because they've been told, oh, we can't deal with that because he's killed or he's accused of having killed a sacred order of people. And so we have to talk about the brother Ozones. We have to talk about the brother Burks, because we cannot let our people believe that other people who come into our communities and harm us, lives matter more than our lives. And so that's why we're here tonight talking about him.
Yep.
You know? So shout out to the brother Jojo and all those who are working with them, because they're trying to raise money for his legal defense. I was told in this country that everybody deserves a defense, you know, and that you're innocent until proven guilty. He hasn't been proven guilty. So we will go fund for a whole lot of stuff, but we won't go fund for a brother Odell Wallace. So this is a shameless plug. They are having what they're calling an October Fest fundraiser, because they need to raise these funds to make sure he gets at least the best defense, and he has a really good team, but they got to be paid. They have to be paid. So please, guys, tune in next week. I'm trying to do a simulcast along with the actual fundraiser that they are doing. Thank you for bringing him to our attention. Let us go into our last conversation this evening, Pastor. And to your point about the marijuana, I love shouting people out, and I think most of the time they know that. Sister Brooke is in the audience with us. She held this excellent webinar on Monday, where she had an expert who's doing marijuana growing. You know, it was for Black farmers. And to your point about the licensing of those who would be dispensaries, already a problem right here in New York, already a problem right across the bridge in New Jersey. Why is it so hard for the people in charge to do right by Black people? Why? No.
Yeah.
But that's a part of the redress, right? That's a part of the redress that we are owed. But somehow, when it comes to putting together a formula for Black people to make us whole, they forget how to do simple math. You know, we have 100,000 permits. We're going to give 80,000 of them to Black people. The other 20,000 can be for everybody else. But these 80,000 are set aside for Black people. You know, that's some easy math, Pastor. I'm not the smartest person, but that's sort of simple to me. But they seem these smart people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars and some millions, they can't do math when it comes to Black people. Another make it make sense question from me. Okay, we're going to move it. And okay, I was not happy with her because for some reason, another smart person forgot what the definition of a woman was during her confirmation hearings. And she is today the newest associate Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, I still have that issue with her. And I'm not a full throttle supporter, right? But what she did in her second appearance, or right after she was sworn in, I suppose that's the word. The case coming out of Alabama, my home state, for those of you who don't know, it's a voters voting rights case. She had a powerful statement about the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. She invoked the language that is necessary to properly identify us as freedmen because it's in there. And it was just really wonderful. Now, we don't have time to go totally into it. Sister Pamela Denise Long, she did a wonderful Twitter space earlier in the week to go over all that the Supreme Court Justice had to say. It was quite phenomenal, Pastor Davis. You even have people like, what's that lady, Rubin? She is a Republican, and I don't care for her either. But even she was pleased with what the Supreme Court Justice had to say. Let me pull it up for a minute before I get your position on that. I'm going to always give credit where it's due. I really am. And even if she turns out to be totally, I turn out to be totally wrong about her, guess what? I'll come back on here and do that too. But let's look at what she had to say. This is from NBC News. As the Supreme Court on Tuesday weighed a conservative attempt to weaken the landmark Voting Rights Act, enacted in 1965 to protect minority voters. That's really interesting because it was really to protect Black voters. But okay, the first Black woman to serve on the Supreme Court delivered a history lesson on the divisive issue of race in the United States. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, in just her second day on the bench, spoke about the enactment of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, stressing how its aim was to redress historic harms to Black people, which is why I corrected how they wrote the article. We're not letting anybody slide with anything. It was written to redress historic harms to Black people in the aftermath of the Civil War and the end of slavery. It was a symbolic moment in a courtroom in which only 3 Black justices have ever sat, exploring the history that lurks in the background of the dispute over Alabama's congressional district map. Pastor Davis, I don't know if you heard the Attorney General, what he said. Basically, he said if people don't like it, they can move elsewhere. That's basically what he said. But let's listen a little bit to Justice Brown Jackson. Just listen a little bit, and then I'll come back. I want to hear what you have to say. Oh, come on, play for us. Oh, I'm not sure if it's going to play, Pastor. All right, I'll just keep reading.
Sometimes the NBC, their website does that. Yeah. Pastor, did you freeze? It's possible that the video may have stopped your stream. Well, audience, let's wait a few minutes to see if Pastor can come back in. Oh. All right, we'll give her a few minutes. Because the topic and I think some of the things that she wants to address are important, but we still need her to sort of frame it out for us. There she goes. There you go.
This is like the old days, Pastor Davis.
But it's all good.
Because in the beginning, I would start buffering, and Pastor Davis would just have to keep going. And I thank you for being such a good partner in that. Let me see. I don't think I should click on the video. I don't know. I mean, people could look at it, and we can. We have enough, right?
Yeah, I think her point was that the 14th Amendment was intentional. It wasn't race neutral,
right?
But it was to correct something.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to the district issue, like that's what you have to do. You can't, Black folks have been disenfranchised and when it comes to having power, right?
Mm-hmm. And
so the 14th Amendment was designed to enfranchise us into things.
Exactly.
But it's always the case with America, white America, that when you end slavery and the South is doing, Black folks are having positions of power. When you think about Reconstruction, that sort of 63 to 1877, I think that period, and you have all that power politically. Then you have the Great Compromise, and the federal troops withdraw from the South and enter Jim Crow, right? Because whatever enfranchisement that 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment gives you, they take it back, right?
Yep.
And that's really the crux of her argument, that this is not some race neutral thing, that we have to do things to protect Black political power.
Right. And in Alabama, I think they really got scared with Doug Jones winning that seat. He's lost it subsequently, but he gained a lot of notoriety for the Democratic Party in a stalwart Republican district. And I think it emboldened Black people, started voting more. I still have a lot also smoke for the CBC, but I will always stand on the side of our people who are fighting for us. And they have one congressional person who is Black, and she's not getting the type of support from the Democratic Party. So I look, they're going to decide on this case, I believe, in the spring. We have to keep watching that and come back to it then. But I'm really proud of the Supreme Court Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. See, that's why, Pastor, I'm sick of first. That didn't matter to me that she was the first Black woman. It didn't. What she did on Tuesday, that mattered to me, because she put redress, which is all about restoring what they've taken from us.
Yeah, but that's why it's important to have critical race theory, right? Because a lot of when you talk about redress, or when you talk about her articulation of these things, it's rooted in that whole concept of critical race theory, that we're looking at America within the proper context, right? And because people always want to reshape the narrative, but you always have to reset it. And I think she did a good job of making it clear.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we're not gonna make something, because even when it talks about, you read the article about minorities, no, it's about Black folks. That's the only Black.
I should send them a letter and tell them to correct it, but whatever.
And so again, those words sink in, and so they water down certain things, because we can never be intentional with redress when it comes to redress or restorative justice for Black people, what we've lost. And so, but over and over and over again, historically, like I said, when I talked about Reconstruction and the Great Compromise and Jim Crow, that we didn't just go from slavery to Jim Crow. You had a period of power.
Yeah.
And the nation didn't want you to have it. And so there was deals cut to make it happen, to water down this. You were supposed to be able to vote from the very beginning. You didn't need a Voter Right Act in 1965, or you didn't need that. That was already established.
Right.
You know, and so your power is always taken away from you. And so you have to reset these narratives, because over and over and over and over again, they take it from you. So I think that, you know, what she did in that regards is powerful. And I think if you're going to be in these positions, that's your job, if you represent us. Right.
And she makes me hopeful for what else we may see, from her. I have to say, well, I don't have to give comments on everything. I'll pass on that, because I really want to end on this high note about what she did to put us back front and center before this nation's highest court. Now, to be sure, the woman who was nominated and is now sitting on the bench just prior to her, when they asked her what are their core responsibilities, ironically, the one that she forgot, Amy Coney Barrett, was redress. And that's, I won't ever forget that about her. Why? Because that's how they think about Black people, that we don't deserve. That's not for them. The heck, even after the Civil War, they paid the slave owners they repaired from their lost wages from our ancestors' free
That's
labor.
a type of reparations for losing their slaves, right? Losing the income. The federal government subsidized slave owners
Exactly.
for money that they were losing.
Right. And when you and I went to school, they just made us love Abraham Lincoln when it was never his intent. You know, if that was a byproduct, ending slavery was a byproduct of keeping the Union together. Okay, well and fine. So now we're all these years later studying on our own outside of school, right? While our children, again, to your point about critical race theory, because they don't even want us to know that, they don't want our kids to know that he wanted primarily that the Union would remain as one.
Oh, yeah.
And very sympathetic to, okay, we're going to take your labor, your free labor. Okay, we're going to give you some lost wages from their labor. And it's just crazy. It's crazy.
And even like the land, the 40 acres and the mule, you never got they got it.
They got it
right there. And they got it at low cost because there was land set aside. That was 40 acres and a mule was supposed to happen. And that land ended up being sold at lower costs to white folks who got it. And so you didn't get it. I mean, again, if we really went through meticulously what this nation has done and don't whitewash it and really, really talk about it. But again, a lot of it is understanding the history. And I think for our community, we really need that. We really need a study on history. Critical race theory is so important because we have been given a narrative and we don't know the details. We don't know the particulars. We don't know these nuances. We don't know all of these little things that they've done. Right. And it was been done by the federal government. There's policies that have stopped you from having certain things. It's the politics end. But a lot of times Black folks typically are not engaged politically or don't read a whole lot of history. Right. And understandably, because we've been fed so many lies, we become indifferent. But going back to the point earlier, we can't be numb.
Right.
We can't be indifferent. You have to be engaged. And Henry Louis Gates did I'm not saying that he does everything great in terms of his presentations, but he did a great documentary on Reconstruction.
Okay.
And you can get it, you can stream it somewhere. And a lot of these little points that we're talking about are there. And I think it's not about even reading a lot of stuff. Sometimes folks don't want to read. There are documentaries that really give you these bits and pieces of information so that when you hear the eloquence that she gave us in regards to the 14th Amendment, you'll understand it. Right. You see.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I often remember how so many Black students in particular said, I hate history. There's a reason why we hate history, because it has not been favorable to us, right? Yeah. But nevertheless, we need to pay attention in class, even if it's showing us how this nation thinks about us, so that we can go back and ask our parents, well, why do they this? Why do they that? And then our parents, if we are well studied enough, even if it is through a documentary, we can tell them, well, this they feel this way about us, or they do this thing to us because of A, B, and C. We need to get into the A, B, and C's of it all with our community, so we won't just be emotional, right?
Yeah. And and it's cross disciplines. It's not just history,
right?
It's I always do sort of the last couple of shows I've been with you. I always recommend books. There's a book by Jacob Carruthers called Intellectual Warfare. And he deals with a lot of times the stuff that we're talking about, that undoing the lens by which we look at things. Because structural racism encapsulates various disciplines, whether it's social sciences, socioeconomic, psychology, history, everything has been whitewashed.
Mm-hmm.
And you have there's a whole different lens to look at things. That's why it's important to go back over history,
Yeah,
and look at it through and looking at it through the prism that the Black scholars will give you. That like there are great Black scholars that can give you better context.
what is the name of the book again? Intellectual what?
Intellectual Warfare by Jacob Carruthers. Right. So it's just he takes a look at various disciplines, philosophical, psychological, socioeconomic, and deals with, you know, the lens of white supremacy, how all these things are immersed in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even earlier when we talked about that's it, when we talked about mental health and that whole field, right? And the failings it's had on our community, and how in this instance it led to a young 20-year-old Black man being shot. It's revisiting, well, why is that the case?
Right.
Right. And even when let's say a Black man does go through some type of therapy or counseling or mental health treatment, why is the actual treatment ineffective, and why is it
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
not helpful to Black folks? As a matter of fact, it's detrimental in many cases.
Yeah.
Because you're oftentimes misdiagnosed, you're not treated the right way. And so it's understanding why does that happen. And I think he covers some of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have to be look at everything critically and critique everything. You know, and so it's not just history, it's everything. You have to look at,
It is. I have a motto. Whenever there's a lie detected, it must be everything must be dissected.
Dissected,
and so,
right? Yeah.
You know, and that means that I don't care what your faith position is, what your political position is, and even your family, friends, relationships. If there's a lie, you got to go back and dissect that thing to see where the lie began. And hopefully you'll find that that's the only lie. But as it relates to how we've been treated in this country, there's so many lies. And I'd rather go in with as much knowledge as possible when I know that's not always a possibility to get in-depth knowledge, but we need to know more and operate from a level of greater than only speaking through our emotions. We need to come with receipts. When we're asking other people for receipts, we need to bring our own. And that's right here. You know, let's use this computer with the knowledge that we are able to gain, Pastor. Well, Pastor, this has been so good. I like it.
Good.
Yeah. We have to. I'm so glad we decided to do this. I think we need it just for ourselves. If nobody else is listening to us, I know I do, because it's just so much stuff going on. I you know, we do this work, try to work with the NYPD because they've done so much harm to us. But then while in these situations, the community doesn't always understand that we're doing this for them, so they can have access, and so that they can, if they are in trouble or their family, their friends are in trouble, they can call on us and we can help them out, because we all need that. We have to be strategic while we're holding them accountable. And I think to not understand the need for strategy in any fight that we are undertaking, and we have so many to undertake, Pastor, as Black people, we can't leave strategy out of it. And so, Pastor, I can't wait until the first Friday in November to have you back again. We need to do this. I think the people need to hear from us. And thank you so much.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Oh, you too. Please tell Pastor Andre and the babies I said hello, and thank them for allowing you to be here with me for an hour and 18 minutes tonight.
And you do the same. Tell your husband and your children that, you know, I love him, love you, and always enjoy this time. Enjoy seeing you in the street sometime and just chit-chatting and catching up. All good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To our audience, thank you for being here with me and Pastor Davis tonight. Don't forget, he's going to be with me every first Friday of the month, if the Lord spares life. Y'all Black, y'all know that's how we talk. If the Lord spares life, we are not counting it as already done. We're going to pray that we'll
That's
be
right.
back here
That's
with
right.
you at the beginning of November. Everyone, peace, be safe. Come back next week where I will be simulcasting if I'm able to. Technologically, you saw the difficulties tonight, but I will be simulcasting the fundraiser for Brother Odell Wallace that will be hosted by Brother Afro Elite and Sister Ghostwriter, or I'll just say JL. Good night, everybody. Pastor, hold on a minute. God bless everybody. Take care.